Tonight on Closer Look, swimmers at Hanlan's Point or Cherry Beach might not want to know, but a move by the Department of Government Efficiency in the United States is having an impact on the extermination of vampire fish. Toronto Today reporter Gabe Oatley is back with us tonight. Gabe, we've covered a lot of topics on this show, but this is a first. Vampire fish, what are they and what damage do they cause?
Yeah, these suckers are pretty gnarly. There's no other way to say it. Like, I try and like all creatures equally, but these little guys make it pretty tough. So vampire fish is the colloquial name for sea lamprey. They're an invasive species in the Great Lakes. And essentially when they're out there swimming around, they latch onto other fish. They then suck their blood, feed on their flesh, and kill them, hence vampire fish. So it's pretty hardcore stuff. And the damage that they can cause is really significant. A single sea lamprey, this is like one of these little nasty guys, can kill up to 40 pounds of fish in a single feeding season. They have no natural predators in the Great Lakes, and they reproduce like crazy. So in the 50s, sea lamprey caused an absolute crisis in the Great Lakes commercial fishing industry because they just decimated fish populations. The US and Canada put in place some really effective population control measures, but those were put at risk by these cuts that you're mentioning.
All right. It certainly doesn't want to make you jump into Lake Ontario, that's for sure.
Totally.
All right, Gabe, the burning question here, what does Elon Musk have to do with all of this?
Totally. So yeah, billionaire Elon Musk is helming DOGE. As you said, this is the U.S. Department of Government Efficiency. As part of his role, as you'll know, he's been slashing jobs across the American federal bureaucracy, ostensibly meant to sort of cut government waste. But these slashes hit the sea lamprey control program. In February, staff at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service learned that they had to fire 12 staff and not bring on a group of about 25 seasonal staff they normally hire up in the spring to run their sea lamprey control program. You know, like 35 odd staff, 40 staff, like what big issue can this cause? Experts say a really big issue. Every spring, staff travel across the Great Lakes, going into tributaries that feed the Great Lakes, applying a compound known as lampricide. You can think of it effectively as like a very good sea lamprey larvae killer. But if they can't apply this stuff and kill the sea lamprey larvae before they swim back down into the Great Lakes, they're nearly impossible to catch when they're out there. So basically when this news got out about the staffing cuts, commercial fishers, sport fishers, Americans really freaked out, and the cuts largely were reversed. So that's good news, but experts say there still are consequences to the fact that these folks were not staffed up for 6 weeks or so.
Okay, so given the temporary lifting of that hiring freeze, how much of the sea lamprey control program can realistically be salvaged this year?
Yeah, I spoke with a director at the Great Lakes Fishery Commission. This is the organization that contracts with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to do the lampricide application. For what it's worth, they also contract with staff at Fisheries and Oceans Canada on this side of the border to do the same thing. He said they're doing everything they possibly can to get this program back on track. But he did acknowledge that, yeah, because of the hiring freeze and the cuts, they're 5 or 6 weeks behind on this program. The program where they're out in the tributaries normally starts in April. And so this is 5 or 6 weeks they didn't have to be planning the trips to sort of like get the gear out to all those different spots across the Great Lakes. Additionally, while the hiring freeze has been lifted, a travel ban for staff remains in place. This includes the folks running this program. And as that director put it to me, you know, sea lamprey won't come to the office, so it could still pose a problem.
So the last major disruption to lamprey control during COVID-19, Gabe, led to a staggering 300% increase in their numbers in some spots. Are experts predicting a similar surge due to this year's delays?
Yeah, the director we spoke with didn't want to speculate on this, but as you mentioned, during COVID, so in 2020 and 2021, they had to reduce the scale of the sea lamprey control efforts. This is this spraying of lampricide. And nearly immediately, the sea lamprey populations increased. Just to give you a sense here, like an individual sea lamprey lady that is, goes up the river to lay her eggs, she can lay up to 100,000 eggs per spawning season. Those eggs subsequently can turn into larvae. I don't know if it's larvae, I'm not sure. And subsequently, those larvae can swim back down into the Great Lakes where they're tough to catch. So this is not good news for squeamish Great Lakes swimmers, as you mentioned. It also could be really bad news for commercial fishers. The director that we spoke with said that the impact of the COVID disruption was a $2 billion loss, holistically.
So, Gabe, with some terminated staff opting not to return, how significant is the loss of their experience, and can it be replaced in time to avoid any long-term damage?
Yeah, it's another great question. I mean, what we do know is that some of the staff that were terminated, some of these 12 staff that were terminated, were some of the program's most experienced. So that's an obvious loss when some of those folks are choosing not to come back. And I mean, as well as I do, it takes time to hire new people. Additionally, we're talking about a pretty specialized service. I don't know the numbers of folks out there that are experts on sea lamprey control, but I can't imagine it's a super deep bench. So I think, it's absolutely concerning.
All right. Now, given the apparent vulnerabilities in U.S.-led control efforts, any movement here in Canada towards greater self-sufficiency in managing invasive species like the sea lamprey?
Yeah, so I'd probably say like two things on this. The first thing is that it's important to note that the staffing issues here only affected the American staff that, control the sea lamprey on their side of the border. So here in Canada, it's Fisheries and Oceans Canada that does the same thing, spraying around here. In the Toronto area, they spray, for instance, in the Rouge River, so, right nearby. So those folks are still, doing their thing on track. That said, sea lamprey don't carry passports, and an expert I spoke with said that a sea lamprey that latches onto a fish can move from one side of the Great Lakes, so say down in Rochester, up to the Toronto waterfront within a week or two. So if the American folks aren't able to spray everywhere or put down this lampricide, it could certainly impact the numbers we're seeing in the Canadian side of the Great Lakes. All of that to say, I spoke with a professor at the University of Windsor, and he absolutely said this is a great example of why Canada needs to take more action and beef up our capacity on these sorts of programs in the Great Lakes. He acknowledged that the federal government has made some moves in this direction. For instance, last year, they pumped tens of millions of dollars into the newly created Canada Water Agency. But his perspective is that they absolutely need to do more, especially where things are at south of the border.
There's Toronto Today reporter Gabe Oatley joining us tonight from Toronto. That's all for a closer look on this Thursday. We'll be back tomorrow. For all of us at Village Media, thanks for watching.